A few weeks ago I talked about Saint Anthony the Great and his definition of an intelligent soul. An intelligent soul is one that loves God, lives for God, 24/7, thinks about God all the time, gets into the car in the morning, says a prayer, or actually wakes up in the morning and says glory to God, slava Bogu, gets up, says some prayers, gets into the car, goes to wherever they're working, what they have to do, with God in their mind and in their heart. So it's all the time you go to work and before you have to do something, maybe something very important, life-changing, you say a prayer. That is an intelligent soul. An unintelligent soul is a person that doesn't know God, cannot see the Creator, even though there is a wonderful creation, cannot see the instigator behind musical, artistic talent. All comes from God, but they can't see it. So they're not. They think they are intelligent. Well, they may be intelligent in their brain, but certainly not in their soul. St. Anthony says, and here's a quote, which is the theme for tonight, that a soul is truly intelligent and virtuous. No, that a soul is truly intelligent and virtuous is shown in a man's look, walk, voice, smile, conversation and manner. The intelligent soul bars the entrance to evil and harmful thoughts. So when we have an intelligent soul, it is in our appearance, in the way we walk, how we talk, and smile, because some people smile. I know these days you have to smile I saw the people in the checkout have to smile, because it's a part of the corporate propaganda. But when it's an intelligent soul, that smile is different, totally different. Voice and manner. And I think it does show up actually the way people walk. They have an intelligent soul that they walk in a special way. I'm thinking of some of the younger people that I used to know that when they walked they had to sway from side to side. This is I don't know what the reason was, what was given, but if they'd had a truly intelligent soul they wouldn't be doing that. I mean, that's on a very simple level, mundane. St. Paisius of the Holy Mountain says, the soul of a true human being, is beautiful, full of inner purity. The divine sweetness of God's love is so pervasive that we can see it on a person's face. Now he talks about an elder on the Holy Mountain that he knew called Father Tikhon. Now I don't know which Tikhon it is because there have been many. I met one, I don't think the one that I met. He said that Elder Tikhon wore very old cassocks, not only old but with holes in them. In fact he was in rags. And yet, when you met him, he looked beautiful. Not just his face, but even his clothing. And it is said that he used to make a headdress, a hat for himself out of old cassocks. He would sew it, put it on his head, and it looked like a bag on his head. Now instead of appearing like a clown and make people laugh, he appeared actually regal, beautiful, like a king. And St. Paisius tells the story how St. Tikhon, well I think he's a saint, he hasn't been glorified. Elder Tikhon was with a group of pilgrims on the Holy Mountain, and it was cold and he began to shiver. So a pilgrim, I don't know where he got it, he got a pajama top. Pajama top. I don't know what colour, stripes, put it over his shoulders to keep him warm. Somebody took a photograph. When that photograph was shown to somebody else off the Holy Mountain, they said, who is this bishop? Because they thought with the pajama top and the ragged cassock that he was wearing a mantilla, bishop's mantilla. You know when the bishop comes to church they put a mantilla on, he wears that. And also the igumen of monasteries wear that as well, in special services. This means that when we have the Holy Spirit, it not only affects the way we look, the way we walk, the way we talk, but in fact what we wear, maybe what we touch. Tonight when I was coming here, I was thinking about that, thinking of examples. Let me go back on Father Tikon. People, I wouldn't say they stole his ragged cassocks, but people would get, if they get hold of it, they would cut it up and give it to people as a relic, because it was precious, it was beautiful. I don't know whether it was fragrant, but I suspect it probably was as well. Anyway, on the way here, I'm thinking of the relics of Saint Spiridon of Timotheus. His relics are incorrupt on the island of Corfu, and every year they dress him and they put shoes on him, and then the next year they take the shoes off and they cut them up into pieces and give to pilgrims. I was given a piece of the shoe. This is 50 years ago. Yeah, it was 50 years ago, and I thought, well, this is peculiar. This is his shoe. How did I get hold of his shoe? No, they said it's not his original shoe. He probably didn't wear shoes. This is from his relics. And I thought this was not a really first-class relic to have. Now I've changed my mind. Because anything, even a tissue or so, it doesn't matter. It becomes infused with Blagadat, with God's grace. Now, we are full of passions, and we're certainly not in the same class as Father Tikon or St. Paisius, but we still have the Holy Spirit. And so this is very important that we as Orthodox Christians, when we're mixing in the world, out on the street, we must be aware of this, that we carry grace with us. Maybe that will encourage us to walk better, in a sense. And a whole conversation and manner. The old word in English, conversation, meant the way you behave, not talking. One's conversation, the way one behaves, one talks. And it applies to all of us here, especially professional people in this room, who have to mix with other professional people, and you have to do it with humility. You have to do it humbly. You have to give the best for your profession, because that's what you're there for. It's got nothing to do with it. But they say that some of the greatest people, the greatest minds, the greatest artists, musicians, scientists, were very humble people. They weren't humble in what they did, in their creation. Pavlov comes to mind immediately, that he was a very humble man.
Who?
Pavlov. So this is something that is for us as well. This isn't just for saints to behave like that. So our conversation, our manner, our way we behave should reflect the way we are in church. In church we don't lounge about. Well, I hope you don't. I'm sure you don't. We should not lean on the wall in church. The sacred is holy. You don't lean on things. You remember the story of the ark? When they're carrying the ark across the river, the oxen stumbled and people rushed forward to touch it, to hold it up, and they were punished. Well, God doesn't punish us for leaning on the wall, but this is all as part of Orthodox ethos. I think the Russian word is cerkovnost. We need to have that churchiness, not just in church, but in our meetings with all sorts of people. This is very important, and that is very important. Now, he says that Saint Tikon, Elder Tikon, dressed in rags, and yet his spirit was beautiful, his soul was beautiful. That made his clothes look beautiful. I don't understand that. I never met him, but I'd like to know what that means. And he says that other people put on new clothes and yet keep wearing the same man inside, buried under layers of sin. Now that's not a censure of the way you dress. There's nothing wrong with dressing well. That's not the point. The point is that you could be well dressed, but inside you are in rags. Yeah, that's what it means. There's another saint, Jacobus, who's been recently glorified, of Evia in northern Greece. Matush and I went and no, we didn't actually. Yes, we did, sorry. Think of John the Russian. We went and we venerated. His relics are not available. He's still in the tomb, and they haven't opened the tomb. I don't know why. But anyway, they said of him that he never gave sermons, or if he did, it was very, very brief. But he was a living sermon. And just to be in his presence, you could feel the sense of the Holy Spirit. The way he moved, the way he smiled, he was always very happy to see people, very loving. He was a living sermon. And his biographer says that anyone, and I have to read this, possessing spiritual eyes and a wakeful heart could see in him a manifestation of God's presence and divine energies on earth. In other words, if you have spiritual eyes, you could see that the energy of God was working through him on earth. St. Paul talks about that, not I, but Christ in me. And Jacobus was like that. It says that words were superfluous. Don't need words. It was sufficient to gaze at the elder. And the elder himself said, we should pray and fast. Our saints are alive. Now, I want to just tell you about St. Jacobus, is that he had a personal relationship with saints to the degree that he could tell them what to do. Can you imagine that? And going to the icon here in the room of St. Nicholas and saying, St. Nicholas, I need your help. You need to come now and heal this person. Now come on. He was commanding. And saints responded. The monastery where he lived was a ruin. I don't want to go through his life. It's very complicated. I mean, it's not complicated, complex. And I don't have time for that. But at this monastery was the head of St. David, who had founded the monastery in 15th century. He was an ascetic, and his head is still in the monastery. And it seems very strange. He used to take the head. It's in a silver casket. It's not just a head under his arm or something. You know, it's in a casket. He would take it around to all the local churches. Now that was not easy because there were proper roads. He had no transport. He didn't have footwear. So he'd walk up and down the mountain carrying the head. And then once when he was carrying the head to a church down in the valley somewhere, it began to rain. And it was very heavy torrential rain. So he prayed to St. David. He said, look, I don't know what to do because I'm going to be soaking wet and your head's going to be wet. I don't know what to do. Will you please stop it? It rained except on him. So as he went along, he was on a dry spot and took the head for people to venerate. He also used to talk to St. John the Russian, and then Michai and Daniela were there, and tell him that he needed to come and help. And so the saint would come out of his grave and go and help him. What sort of intimacy is that? What kind of relationship? Why don't we have that relationship with the saints? Fast, pray, our saints are alive. This is important. Think about this. Think about this. Saint Macarius the Great, he says, know, O man, your nobility and dignity. Know that you are noble and that you have dignity. You seem to know that you should know that. And to realize our nobility, we need to relinquish self-esteem, belief in self. I think this is the big problem with self-esteem. Not to believe in yourself, not to recognize, not to recognize your talents, but not to believe in yourself. So you're always trusting God. If I'm going to do something, God bless. Very simple. Simple. Taking an exam, God bless. Having an important meeting or important work you have to do, God bless. That makes it holy. But with self-esteem, we're worried about now, how am I going to appear? Am I going to say the right words? Am I, how is it going to impress people? No, that's wrong. The schools are teaching children this idea of self-esteem, which basically is making them self-centered, more self-centered than they are. Because we're all self-centered. We're born self-centered. We have to be to survive. As a baby needs food. If it doesn't cry, it doesn't get fed. It will get fed eventually, but in other words, it's always wanting this, give me that. And so our children grow up dependent and wanting to be the centre of attraction. All kids, no exception. Why? Because of fallen nature. And so we as parents have to shape them and provide various disciplines. I'm not talking about punishment, I'm talking about discipline in which there's certain things you just don't do. I don't give a talk on education, but I taught for many years actually, right from kindergarten up to coal miners in New Zealand. In other words, training, job training. And to me, God gave me that experience so that I can pass it on to you. This is, we need to understand that we have our soul is beautiful, our soul has nobility, but we cannot see it because we're tied up in ourselves. And as one of the elders said, don't trust yourself this side of the grave. Don't trust yourself this side of the grave. He also said that when we become sick, that we should not blame God, because the body is corruptible, therefore it gets sick. There's nothing to do with God. It's not God's fault that one is ill. And in many cases, illness is given to us in order to teach us humility, because there isn't any other way to learn it. Some people it's poverty, but I think illness is the biggest one. If we can accept it, which is not easy, of course, we receive grace, a double dose of grace. We get more grace. He says that we need to know our soul. He says, as a child grows and gets larger, and becomes an adult, so the soul grows as well. And in heaven, we will be giants. Enormous. I've always thought about that. Adam, if we'd seen Adam before the fall, I think we would not be able to look at him. Superhuman. Enormous. A face that you could not look at because it was so bright. And that is how we should be. We cannot be that on earth. I'm talking about in heaven. But our soul can reflect that. So we need to understand that we have a lot of gifts from God. St. Macarius says, when Elijah closed the heavens, in other words, stopped the rain, and then opened the heavens, was it Elijah that did it? And the answer is no, it was God who worked through Elijah. When Moses threw down his rod and it turned into a serpent, did he do that himself? Did he divide the Red Sea so that they could cross? It was God through Moses. The story of David and Goliath, how David slew the great giant. It wasn't David. It was the Holy Spirit working through David. And I think from this we can learn that as we abandon ourselves and worry about, can I do this, this is going to happen to me, and ignore that, then God is able to work through us. This is the greatest gift that we have, that we can offer to the world around us. And like Elijah, we'll be able to open and close the rain, change the weather. I'm not saying on such an ambitious project, but even in small ways, we have that ability if we recognize the ability of our soul. I'm sure you're thinking, like I thought when I read that, well, you know, I don't think my soul is very noble. It is, despite sin. It is despite sin, because it's a gift from God. We're made in the image of God. So we are divine, but we cover it with sin. We cover it because we were self-centered. So it is said that the other person was Joshua and Jericho. It wasn't Joshua that made the city fall, the walls. It was God through Joshua. And again, Joshua going into battle, he asked God, make this your battle, Lord. And so he was successful in the battle. Maybe he wasn't a very good general, but it's irrelevant. I think that amazing story of Gideon when he was fighting the Midianites, and that there are 30, say, I don't know figures, but say 30,000, and they were 3,000. And he prayed to God to give them a victory against 30,000 people. And God said to him, "You've got too many people." So he sent some home. He said, "Well, now I've got, I'm not sure the exact figures in the Bible. Came from give help on that. Say 1,000." And God said, "No, it's too many." What? So send them away. He sent them away. And he ended up with 300. And God said, "Yeah, that's just right." Against 30,000, 50,000. No, it's 50,000 actually. 300. They routed the Midianites. It was God working through Gideon, not Gideon being a clever strategist, but trusting in God's mercy. So how can it affect us? It affects every one of us here. Everyone, whatever we're doing during the day. If we abandon self-esteem and self and worry, anxiety, then God is able to work through us. Not, "Oh, I feel better if I trust God." No, it's nothing to do with that. It's allowing God to work through us, and he does, and he's willing to do that. But it is found by degree and pain and much work and patience and love towards God. That's how it happens. But he also says that the senses of our soul gets exercised through evil. So misfortune, bad things that happen to us actually are good for us because they exercise the soul. It says here, a quote from St. Macarius, "He who experiences evil daily," and a lot of us do, "and does not realize in himself the Holy Spirit that strengthens his weakness and renews the gladness of heart. He is like a person who travels without knowing the providential care of God's grace and peace." If we don't trust in God's providence, then we cannot receive that peace that he gives us, the strength. He wants to work through us, hoping to be able to do that. But of course we have free will. And I think that's the reason that we become self-centered, because we feel that we know the answer to everything. And so Macarius says a curious thing, or maybe you may understand it, but I don't. He said, only one part of the soul is touched. There are many parts to the soul. Now I'm going to investigate that because I haven't come across that before. So when something good happens, or we begin to trust in God and see the results, okay? This is just a part of the soul. There's still a lot that has to be exercised. Any questions? Jacob. Yes, when he was fighting Amalek, he held his arms up to heaven. The moment he took his arms away from heaven, as it symbolically, they started losing the battle. So he had to put his arms up again. Well, this was going on for hours, this battle, so eventually he had to prop his arms to keep them up Because once they were up, they were victorious. The battle was on their side, and eventually they defeated Amalek. That's another example that St. Macarius gives. So tonight what I've talked about is the writings of St. Anthony the Great, St. Macarius of Egypt, St. Paisius of the Holy Mountain, our contemporary saint,